I guess to me, harder faster is probably one of the best representations of a hard grit route and what hard grit entails. Hard grit really distills trad climbing down to its most exciting elements. It's kind of like you take all the most gnarly parts of trad climbing and just turn them up to the max. Ironically, as maybe one of the more intense styles of trad climbing, hard grit is actually technically probably one of the easier styles of trad climbing, mainly because you don't actually have that much gear to place. And sometimes, like on this route, you've placed the gear and reversed back to the ground before going for it in one push. It's really about trying to do everything you can to get all the cards in your favour. The first few moves on Harder Faster, and Gaia for that matter, are really easy. You just kind of plod out along this ramp, you get to a really comfortable position at the bottom of the groove where you can or you have already placed all this gear, and you just kind of psych yourself up for what's about to start. Actually, that's not true. You don't really have to psych yourself up for anything because all the mental preparation has already taken place before you start the route, and by this point you're pretty much on autopilot. At least I am. You can see here I'm kind of fiddling with the rope. This is because I was trying to keep the distance between the gear and the ground as big as possible, so I basically just clipped all of the friends with single carabiners. This seemed like a great idea at the time, but actually in practice it probably wasn't the smartest thing to do. The single beaners on the three friends kind of got twisted together with each other, and to make things worse I was using two big fat ropes, and it just, well, made for a lot of rope drag. Before setting off, I told myself that there were a few points where I could stop and reverse and potentially down climb out of a dangerous situation. The first one's basically here, where you're at the end of the climbing on Gaia, and by this point you can already see I'm struggling with the rope drag. If I'd done everything I'd told myself I was going to do, I should have already down climbed at this point. But you're so much in the zone that you just don't think anything's actually really going to go wrong. Or more accurately, you just don't think full stop. You're really just moving. You're letting the moves that you've climbed tens if not hundreds of times before just flow back through you. This long move up with your left hand is the start of the really exciting part of Harder Faster. I'm stretched out to my limit to get the sloper, or at least to get the good part of the sloper, and I've no idea how my friend Toby actually climbed this move back in the day, being about 10 or 15 centimetres shorter than I am now. It's hard to know how hard exactly this boulder problem would be at the top. It took me a few times to climb it when I first started trying it on top rope, but at the same time I didn't really know what the moves are, the rock was dirty, and the positions are so subtle that it can go from feeling impossible to relatively easy in a very, very short space of time. One thing's for sure though, this boulder problem is never, ever, ever going to feel secure. Topping out on Harder Faster made me realise why I loved climbing routes like this in the past. Saying it's like a drug doesn't do it justice. It's a level of calm, of peace and serenity that I've never felt anywhere else before. And disappearing into that bubble definitely makes the risk worth it. I'm super happy to have done Harder Faster for everything that it represents to me personally. But even though it felt so good, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be running out anytime soon to do another insane trad route like that.
Gaia starts with this obvious ramp going sideways. It's fairly easy actually, that section, but it's still better to optimize it until you reach the gear placements. There's a first gear placement in the crack and then a second one in the vertical crack. right after you place the gear, there's to me, what is the crux section. Going to that right hand up. It took me a lot of time to figure it out. And finally I do with a left heel, and it's quite crucial. So I've got my left hand in the 2-finger pocket, and it's quite crucial for me to like push with my right hand. And the next section, I think, to be honest, is easier if you're a bit taller. Every single move I have to high step with like smearing feet, and I know, I mean, I've seen James, if you're taller it's just much more comfortable. I can just about reach the last right hand sloper, and then obviously getting in the groove, I think it's maybe easier if you're like shoulder flexible, so for me that was fine. I paid a lot of attention to that section because this is where you start to be in the dangerous zone, and it's also a semi-rest but not like very comfortable. Better to plan to not stop too long, I think, otherwise you start freaking out. On the lead, I remember having maybe a mini freak out and like pulled myself together straight away. And then obviously the first dangerous move starts. It's stepping off the groove and then matching hand on the slopers, because it's a balancing move when you get your foot out of that groove. And obviously the last section, I send my right foot on the arete first, so if I happen to slip off the slopers on that movement, I would definitely not be in a good place. But I've never actually slipped of it. But yeah, it's really it's a move where you cannot afford to fall. And I mean, yeah, you could still maybe fall going for the arete, but I think it's okay. And then it's finished. Gaia is the very first properly dangerous route that I've done, and I knew I was able technically to do it. What I didn't really know was whether I would be able to control my mind and just stay on track. But it's quite a similar effort to the pressure of competition in terms of how to handle it, so I just handled it the same way and it worked fine. Great route. Hats down to Johnny Doe's. I mean, just like many other routes that he's done, I guess it was so visionary at the time because he's so bold. Obviously it was going to be Johnny Doe's doing that.